So it is like this. I was on the real side together with Sepide, and all at once we entered into some wonderful words, and from there we went through a totally dark tunnel which was rather long. And then from there again we entered a brighter world. A little forward there was a great light shining. The real guides became aware of our entry into the real universes, and dozens of them gathered at the city gates to welcome us, among which presence of some ancient guides like Yabul Sakabi and Gopaldas, Tuard Managi, Katadaki, Fubiquans, and also Duane, and many more was eye-catching. As I was looking to that wondrous words, it looked like totally alive, like its magnificent glitter inspired this impression. Here is the truth empire. I was so amazed and all over in wonder, staring to the immensity of the golden glint of that place, as Yobel Sakabi came forward together with Karadaki, and Yobel began his words, smiling at us this way. Welcome to the truth empire, my children. Here no impurity would be found, and it's all pure reality flowing, the constructive particles of which is purity and real light shining, and the invisible columns of which is afoot, relying on the splendid potency of the is. Purity is running forever throughout here. It was interesting that Yobo Sakabi named it the Truth Empire as well, so it conferred my true recognition of that impression this word had already sent to me. After Yobel finished his words, together with Katadaki, we went to visit that imperial city. Wow, it was all mysterious and topping. Everything had the purity of a real light, and was made of the true reality life is, even buildings, ground, sky, and whatsoever in it. Katadaki began to speak. My children, one who has a real connection is present in the real universes every moment, and they are observing everything from the real universes. Their body is a resident of dualistic worlds, while their heart is always open to the true reality and the real guides. They are concordant with the all-is, and while seeming silent, they are flowing like a roaring river toward the truth ocean. Her words ended with a pleasant smile, and as we answered her with our smile, again she continued. Rivers Ortars is providing a huge performance, and people are in such a motion because of that. They are providing necessary supplies. After a lengthy sightseeing in each and every corner of that vast city, Karadaki looked at us and said, Let's go, it's time for the show. We passed some streets and arrived to a very large square. People of that city were coming in groups and positioning themselves in the square. There was a huge stage there in the middle of the square, and Rivazar and Duane were standing there on it. They were actually waiting for the people to gather in that place. We were standing by the stage in front of Rivazar and Duane, and were telepathically greeting with them. And as I looked closely to the stage, I wondered that there were not any screens or other instruments to perform the show. As though Ribazar touched my waves, he laughed out and began to say, I appreciate all of you who came here. I pointed to the stage with his hand and said, This is the show that I have provided for you. And surprisingly, the inanimate scene began to become alive. The adventure was occurring lively and in a huge and real scale on the stage, so that anybody anywhere was able to watch it. Sepida and I, amazedly, were waiting for the rest, as all of a sudden a strange instrument appeared on the stage, the height of which was rather more than a human's height, and its width was about 1 meter, and had a complicated look. Ribazor said, This is an instrument in little dimensions in order to show how negative force and its servants act in order to prevent each Yudan from conquering its little self. Ribazar divided residents of the earth into 3 groups. 1. Those who solely attend in their lower self. 2. Those who are aware of the reality but make less attempts and just circulate between their lower and real selves. 3. Those who, according to their choices and attempts, have reached a level in which they always reside in their real self. Ribazar remained silent for a long time while staring directly into my eyes. Ribazar's eyes are the most penetrating eyes I have ever seen. He telepathically said to me, "My son, are you ready to pass a test about the function of this instrument?" As I was shocked by his offer, I said, "Yes, for sure." And I found myself immediately on the stage, and Ribazar said, "And now, beginning of the show." Everything on the stage changed on the spot, and I was in my little self, standing by Ribazar and Duane as a viewpoint, while in the meantime there was a spectacular show of my little self taking place on the stage. I was watching the scene both from the inner and the outer angle, which was a totally new experience for me. I was both the observer and the one passing the test. Everything was looking like ideal until something strange happened. The machine started to work, and it was like my little self wasn't able to see it. It was somehow that the person was under control by it. The main part of the machine invisibly placed itself above the head of my personal self and started to send tremendous amounts of destructive and negative waves and vibrations to it in a large volume. As the player of the show, I bended under those devastating waves each time, but the system was descending automatically above my head so that to stick to my head and to put a double pressure on me all the time. Finally, my head reached the floor, and that machine squished my head under pressure like a sledgehammer. It was a weird experience. The stage seemed empty for a while until as though the next show began. This time I was playing the role of a person who makes contact with the reality and enjoys the real guidance, but again spends a lot of time in its lower self. Second scene started immediately. I was totally dizzy and intoxicated, like one who gets aware of himself only from time to time. The machine started to work, and while I was dizzy, it pushed me downward. However, while I was aware, the boys helped me to stand and hold my head up. I had to choose whether to remain dizzy and looking for sort of a so-called help, or to establish my whole awareness in my real self and just stand up. The play continued this way for a while, and I just kept on bewildered. It seemed that my lower self wasn't able to remain in the real awareness and was suffering all the time under that pressure. After a while, finally the stage disembarked. Ribazar said, "Now we perform the third part of the show." I appeared on the stage with my real awareness and entered the machine. Then it began to send its formidable waves of negative forces, which were so much more than the previous times, but this time it couldn't enforce anything. Pressure elevated so much that the system couldn't bear itself and actually self-destroyed with a fearsome explosion. When this show finished, Ribazar said, "As you saw in the show, negative force is about to turn dualistic worlds to a gigantic controlling machine for all residents of it. Each unit plays one of these three performance roles in the lower worlds, and negative force makes its best attempts to prevent him from entering the real universes. Its whole purpose is building an impermeable dam against the reality, neglecting that the allies and the real guides break this dam every moment, and so always keep the way open for the real seekers of the real truth. As you saw, by residing in the real awareness, negative power cannot enforce anything but self-destruction. But this constant residency requests a moment-by-moment choosing practice, which not everybody does so. This is an all-around wake-up in relation to the real self and a higher awareness, which needs an insistent decision-taking process. This choosing continuity opens a channel through which is provided the hypnotized support of the real guides, and it breaks the ignorance dam. When Rebazar finished speaking, he took a glimpse of us and said, "This was a real truth, I just depicted for you and for all of our friends." That's it. Thank you.